I've sold over $1 million worth of brand design services, and I also have over 650 5-star reviews from clients who have worked with me in regards to brand development. And in this video, I want to share with you my step-by-step process so that I can design logos like this that keep clients super happy and keep them coming back to work with me again and again. Now, I'll be honest and say that my brand design process hasn't always been super perfect, but by implementing this new process into my business, it has allowed me to charge far more for my brand design services. It's allowed me to make my clients far happier and far more satisfied. And it's also made me personally more proud of the brand design work that I've actually produced and executed on. Now, by no means am I going to tell you what to do with your logo design process, but I just want to share what works for me because it's really helped me to charge more for my services, minimize revisions from clients, and also have happier clients overall. So I think it's definitely worthwhile sharing my experience. And I'm also going to actually work you through a full project that I did with a recent client so you can actually see the process come to life and how I refine things going forward. So anyway, what's the first step? Well, any creative process for me personally starts with a strategic call. So this is me and the client jumping on Zoom and asking very specific questions in regards to what they want to achieve with the thing that we're actually developing, in this case, brand identity development, and also as well, what their personal preferences are. Now, I'll leave a link in the description for a free download, which essentially includes all of the questions that I ask clients throughout the logo development process so that you can ask the exact same ones and have more in-depth and insightful discussions with them. Now, what we want to achieve, at least me personally, what I want to achieve from this discovery call with the client is to understand what we want to communicate with the logo. And all the information that we get from that strategic call needs to be boiled down to just 10 words, 10 nouns to describe or at least give an insight in regards to what we want to communicate with the brand mark. And the reason we do this is in the next stage where we get into sketches and really kind of bringing the brand to life visually, we need to focus on what words are the most important. So by focusing everything about the brand into a list of 10 words, which is kind of ideal, to be honest, you can do less, but I like about 10, it gives us clarity in regards to where we should be focusing when we are looking at how to communicate things visually, which I'll get to in a little bit. Now, once I have my 10 nouns, I'll then move on to the next stage of the process, which is to bring those nouns to life visually. Now, this is actually really simple. I go to websites such as Pinterest and Behance and Google and free app icon websites to basically look at the different types of icons that I can use to communicate certain things. So for example, you'll see here that I have the brand name, which at the time was Cilicia, but then we changed it to Ginger later on in the process. We were kind of playing between the two and then the client ended up changing last minute. But ultimately, we were looking at communicating a couple of things. So these were some of the nouns that Crystal, the lady who I was working with, pointed out as being the most important to the actual brand and what we're trying to communicate. So for example, East and West. So the actual brand is focusing on Eastern and Western medicine and harmonizing the two. She also said sewing was something that was quite important to her, or it kind of tied into what the brand was doing. Other words like bridge, health, harmony, remedy, medicine, holistics, and she also as well pointed out a couple of other words like health, science, remedy, condition, patient, a couple of others as well. When we are in the sketching phase, just kind of bringing the actual, the nouns to life, we need to focus on exploring as many different shapes as possible. So for example, here you can see we are exploring connection or a bridge, and you can see lots of different types of bridges that we explored. This comes in extremely handy later on in the process in the next stage, which I'll come to in a little bit. But the reason for exploring as many different options as possible, so you can see here, for example, we're looking at, how can we communicate science, how can we communicate, cells, and then we start to actually look at, creating a little icon with a C for Cilicia, with negative space, so that kind of came to light as well. And what we're doing at this stage of the process is we're just trying to figure out which shapes work well with others best. We're just trying to kind of get as much ammo for us to use later on in the process in the next step, so we can have as many options as possible as we start to bring these shapes together to create truly distinctive and unique icons. So here, for example, you see that there's two leaves, and the two leaves are kind of pointing east and west. This was something which we took into the next stage, which you'll see a little bit later, which really helped us to create a truly iconic and distinctive icon for the app, which was named Ginger. Now, once we've sketched all of the icons and we're kind of quite happy with how things are looking, we then start to refine things and make things digital ultimately. So we'll sketch some different icon ideas. So for example, here we have this sort of C with a little leaf inside, and then we also have the little sort of negative space science beaker, which was ultimately bringing together the science aspect of the brand with also the holistic aspect with the little herb, and also the C as well, tying into the letter C for Cilicia before it changed to Ginger. Now, when we changed the name to Ginger, we then started to look at other options in regards to the icon and what the icon could potentially be. So you can see here, for example, we ended up going for a couple of different approaches. So this one, for example, was focused around the lotus flower. And if you can see here, we have the lotus flower. We have many different options of the lotus flower, so we can obviously discuss them with the client. And you'll notice that all of these are in black and white. At this point in the process, we're just focusing on the icon and the geometry of the actual icon itself. We're not looking at adding word marks and making things more complicated. We're just focusing on the essence of the icon itself, keeping things super simple and clear for the client. So you can see here, for example, we have a little bridge underneath the lotus leaf, and it just merges together really nicely. This little doorway within the bridge, or this kind of arch under the bridge, was part of one of the sketches that we did in the initial stage. So we saw that shape, we saw that it was kind of like a lotus flower, so we merged those two together to create a really nice little icon, which is super distinctive and super nice, and it fits together perfectly. As you can see here, we also explored kind of the medical cross with kind of a more kind of harmony approach. We also looked at the leaf approach, which we then realized had a pill shape included in it when we were digitizing it. So as we were kind of working on it, we're like, oh, okay, wait a second. We've got two leaves pointing east and west, but if we put them together in a certain way, they now make the shape of a pill, which is essentially a symbol of Western medicine, because they kind of focus on, prescribing, a more drug-focused health approach. So that was really interesting, and this was actually one of the concepts that Crystal ended up going with. She liked this one best because it was just perfectly fitted to what she wanted to communicate for the brand itself. Now, we did look at other options, and at the end of the process, what I like to do is just to kind of select the best 6 logos, or maybe 4, that I personally think have the most potential. And then what we will essentially do is we'll select 1 or 2 of these, depending on the package that the client selects, to take forward into developing the full brand identity concept. Now, at this point of the process, we've did all of the sketches and we've went through all of the different icons that could symbolize the nouns that we already confirmed with the client. We have then married some together and created some icon ideas and directions that we really like. Now it's time to really focus on the ones that we think are showing the most potential and kind of being highlighted as communicating the brand's essence best, okay? So for example, this was the final design that we did for Ginger. So you can see here we have the icon, we have the word mark which we developed, and you can see here, if we look closely at the word mark, the actual shapes themselves of the letters have been manipulated to match the actual icon itself. So I think we took this curve from the icon of the actual leaf in the sort of negative space of the pill, and we used it to curve the letters, and we also manipulated the actual letters themselves in regards to, how they were curved in certain corners to make it a little bit more approachable and just look a little bit more friendly and fun. We also have 3 different versions of the logo. So we have the icon, we have the word mark by itself, and then we obviously have the icon and the word mark together. And then you can also see a really simple breakdown of the color palette that we would recommend, and you can also see lots of different examples of the actual branding and the color palette and the logo. This is just the word mark, obviously. This is the icon. You can see that the branding looks good in both digital and also print format, so you can see that it works. Now at this point, once we have the finished concept, it's then time to ultimately discuss this with the client and see what they think. Crystal loved this particular concept, and this was the one that she chose to go forward with. However, she did say that the leaf inside the pill, in the negative space of the pill, was not instantly recognizable. So she said that it did take her a little while to realize that this was a leaf. So this was something that we needed to work on. I also pointed out, I thought that the pill and the leaves inside didn't flow as well. It didn't quite have that kind of that seamless flow that I was really looking for. So I said, okay, I want to spend a little bit of time looking at other leaf designs inside the pill, inside the negative space. And also as well, I want to try and make the leaves inside the pill flow better so that it's kind of one continuous beautiful mark, which just is a treat for the eyes, right? That was ultimately what I was aiming for when I don't knock my microphone over. Typical. Anyway, so that was where I left things off before I went into the refinement stage, and I started to really look at, okay, how can we take the current concept, which we're really happy with, but execute it to a higher level? And honestly, guys, I think that this is the thing that a lot of designers don't do. It's looking at your designs from an objective standpoint and just saying, okay, if I was the client, how can I make this better, knowing what I know in regards to design? I knew for a fact that this concept and the message and the direction was really good, but the execution wasn't quite there. The client didn't know that. Her expertise is not in design. She has a good eye for design, but she doesn't do design every single day, so she couldn't pick up on the little nuances that I could from seeing it, but I didn't know how to fix it. So I needed to spend time on refining things. And once I'd taken the time to revisit the icon with a fresh pair of eyes the next day and refine things to make it look a little bit more like a leaf and a little bit less like a peach or a bum shape ultimately, and also look at the flow of the actual icon as well, I started to get to a point where I was a lot more happy with the finished icon, which you can actually see here. So you can see that the actual icon itself flows a lot better. It just has a lot more of a seamless feel to it. You can also obviously see the more obvious leaves inside the pill, which are just a lot more recognizable whilst also being distinctive. I also added a little bit of curvature on the vines to give it a little bit more of a 3D effect, just to help it stand out a little bit more and make it a little bit more dynamic, I think. But overall, you can see that the finished icon is, I think, at least 5 times better than the original version that I sent to Crystal. And the reason for that is literally not because I'm magic, not because I'm, incredibly gifted or talented. It's literally because I took the time, once we had that discussion, to spot the things that Crystal had pointed out that were a little bit concerning, aka the leaves inside the pill were not as obvious as she'd like, and also as well take the time to revisit them with a fresh pair of eyes from a designer's perspective to say, okay, how can this be improved? And you end up with a piece of work that you are so much happier with, simply because you have taken the time to refine things and you're not just rushing to get the project finished. And once I sent that final design to Crystal, she signed it off immediately. She left me a 5-star review and everyone was happy, and I sent her all the final files, and now I think we're going to work together in regards to her brand's presentation as well, because I know that she is meeting with investors fairly soon in the future. So that was my logo design process. I hope you found that valuable. I hope you can add at least one little thing into your process to make your logos better in the long run. And also as well, if you have anything that you think I could use and to improve my process or improve the execution of my logo designs, I love to learn, right? I always want to improve. I always want to get better. So feel free to let me know, and I'm more than happy to, take any value that you can provide as well, because I know that there's probably a couple of things that I can learn from you as well. So anyway, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video, and hopefully see you in the next one. See you soon.